The twin suns hung low in the yellow sky of Ixar 4, casting long shadows over the star market. It was loud. Voices shouted, slaves cried, chains rattled, alien buyers walked through rows of cages, inspecting what was left. Old ones, sick ones, broken ones. In the last cage, alone and shivering, sat a small alien girl. Her skin was light blue, her hair short and white. Her eyes were wide with fear. She looked no older than 16 in human years. Her name was Salia, but no one had used it in a long time. She was the runt, the useless one. Too thin to work, too scared to fight. That's what the slave traders said. She had been sold 3 times already. Each time they sent her back. Now she was up for auction again. Her wrists and ankles were chained, and her body shook in the cold wind. The auctioneer stood tall on a metal platform and shouted, "Next up, blue-skinned female. Weak, yes, but still alive. Start at 10 credits." The crowd laughed. 10 credits for that scrap? She'll die in a day. No one wants that thing. Salia lowered her head. She knew this moment well. No one would bid. They would call her trash. Then they would drag her back and beat her again. She had stopped crying weeks ago. Now she just waited for it to be over, but this time, something different happened. A tall, rough-looking human man stepped forward. His coat was dusty. His beard was gray. A long scar ran across his cheek. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. He raised one hand slowly and said, "I'll pay. The 10? Silence. Everyone turned. The auctioneer blinked. "Sir, did you say 10 credits? For her?" The man nodded once. "Yeah." The crowd murmured. Some laughed. One alien whispered, "Humans are strange." The trader shrugged. "Sold. Take her." 2 guards unlocked Salia's chains and pushed her toward the man. She stumbled but didn't speak. She didn't dare look up. The human didn't touch her. He simply turned and started walking. Salia followed. She had no choice. They walked through the dusty streets until they reached a small transport ship, parked near the edge of the city. It was old, but clean. The human pressed a code on the door, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the ship was quiet. He led her to a room. It wasn't big, but there was a soft bed, a blanket, a clean towel. He pointed to it and said, "This is your room. Clean yourself up. There's food in the kitchen, no chains, no orders." Salia stared at him. She didn't move. He looked at her again, then said, "You're not my slave. Not anymore." And then he left. Just like that. Salia stood there, frozen. No yelling, no cuffs, no pain. She waited. 10 minutes, 30 minutes, still nothing. She walked to the bed and sat down. It was soft. Softer than anything she'd felt in years. She touched the pillow and almost cried. She crept into the small bathroom and saw a mirror. Her own face scared her. She looked like a ghost. Hollow eyes, dirty skin, bones showing under blue flesh. She found water, warm water. She washed. She used the towel. She found clothes, clean ones. She ate. Slowly. Her hands shook. She kept glancing at the door, waiting for the man to come in and hurt her. But he didn't. Hours passed. The ship hummed gently as it moved through space. Night came. She couldn't sleep. Her mind raced. Why did he buy me? What does he want? Is this a trick? She tiptoed out of her room. The hallway was dark. She followed a soft light coming from another door. She peeked inside. It was a small room filled with old photos. In one picture, she saw the man, much younger, smiling next to a tall alien woman with blue skin. Next to them stood a small child, also blue-skinned, also with white hair, just like her. Salia's breath caught. That was his family. She looked closer. The child. It could have been her twin. Her heart pounded. Suddenly, a voice behind her said, "Couldn't sleep?" She turned quickly. It was him, the human, He wasn't angry, just tired. Salia opened her mouth but said nothing. He walked past her, picked up a photo frame and looked at it quietly. "My daughter was taken by slavers," he said, voice low. 10 years ago. She looked a lot like you." Salia said only 2 words. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. Then he walked away. Again, no chains. No shouting. Just silence. Salia stood alone in the photo room, her hands trembling. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. Salia woke with a start. She was still on the soft bed, still in clean clothes, still free. She sat up fast, her heart pounding. She looked around the small room, quiet, warm, still untouched by chains or pain. Was it a dream? No, it was real. The human, Grayson, had not returned since last night. She stepped out of bed, her thin blue feet touching the smooth floor. No cuffs, no collars, no orders. Her body was clean. Her skin wasn't burning from a whip. Her belly wasn't empty. Still, she didn't relax. Slavers played tricks. Sometimes they smiled before hurting you. Sometimes they fed you to make you easier to sell. Salia walked slowly through the hallway of the ship, careful not to make a sound. She paused at each corner, ready to run if she had to, but there was nothing to run from. In the kitchen, she found a plate of food, covered, still warm, and a note. Just 4 words. Eat. You need strength. The handwriting was strong. Human. She picked up the plate. Her hands trembled. The smell hit her nose. Warm bread, soft roots, and real meat. Tears filled her eyes. She hadn't cried in weeks. Not when they beat her. Not when they kicked her. But this. A hot meal and kind words. That broke her. She ate slowly. Every bite felt strange, like it didn't belong to her. She kept waiting for footsteps. A blow. A scream. Nothing came. She cleaned the plate and left it where she found it. Then she wandered the ship. It was old, but well kept. No signs of slaves, no cages. Just a quiet ship, with a quiet man and now her. She stopped at a door and listened. Inside, Grayson's voice spoke low. "No, I'm not turning her over. She's not for sale. No, she's not stolen. She's free." He ended the call. Salia stepped back, afraid. She wasn't supposed to hear that. She turned to leave, but the door opened. Grayson looked at her. He didn't yell, didn't scowl. He just nodded and said, "You slept well?" She nodded slowly. "You hungry?" "I ate. Good." Silence filled the space between them. Then he said, "You're free to leave any time, but if you stay, you follow one rule." Her breath caught. Here it comes, she thought. The trick. But he only said, "Don't lie to me, ever, that's all." She stared at him, confused. He looked at her, really looked. Not like an owner, not like a slaver, like someone seeing a real person. "Why did you buy me?" she whispered. Grayson looked down, his hands folded behind his back. He walked over to the window and stared at the stars outside. "You reminded me of someone," he said. She didn't ask who. She already knew. The blue-skinned girl in the photo. The daughter he lost. "I'm not her," Salia said softly. "I know," he replied, and still he was kind. The next day passed the same way. Quiet, safe. She was given clothes, books in basic English, a brush for her hair. She cleaned her room, out of habit. No one asked her to. She began to feel strange. Not scared, not angry, just unsure. Was this peace? Was this real? That night, she walked into the main hall. Grayson was sitting in the pilot's chair reading a map. She stood behind him, unsure what to say. He spoke without turning. I'm heading to the outer colonies. There's a station there where you can get freedom papers. Real ones. You'll be protected. No one can claim you again. Her chest tightened. And after that? He paused. That's up to you. Celia looked at her hands. Soft now. Clean. She didn't look like a slave anymore. But she didn't feel like a person either. She whispered, "Can I stay a little longer?" Grayson finally turned to face her. His eyes were kind, but tired. "You can stay as long as you want." Then he stood and left her alone. Later that night, she found a small room filled with weapons, guns, blades, armor. Her heart jumped. Was this a trap? Was he preparing to fight? She stepped back quickly, but beside the armor, she saw something else. A small folded dress. Blue child-sized old Celia touched it with shaking fingers. It had belonged to the girl in the photo. The one who never came. Oh, now Celia understood. He hadn't saved her out of guilt. He had saved her because no one had saved his child. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't want to lose another. The ship moved silently through deep space. Inside, Celia stood alone in the photo room. Her hand rested on a frame. Her fingers trembled. The photo showed a happy moment, Grayson holding a blue-skinned child in his arms. His smile was wide, and the little girl looked just like Celia. She couldn't look away. She touched the glass. Was her name Elira? She whispered. Behind her, a voice answered. Yes? Celia turned. Grayson was standing at the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes were sad. I saw her once, he said. She was running through the garden, chasing stars in a jar. She laughed so hard she dropped it. Celia stepped back. What happened to her? Grayson walked into the room. He didn't sit. He stared at the wall as he spoke. Slavers hit our colony. They took the women and children, burned the rest. He paused. I was away. I came back to ashes. Celia said nothing. Her heart beat hard in her chest. She was only 10, Grayson said. My wife fought to protect her. They both vanished. I searched for years, hired ships, paid smugglers, even visited black markets. He looked at Celia now. Then I saw you. She stepped forward, voice soft. You thought I was her? He shook his head. No, I knew you weren't. But I saw the same fear in your eyes. His words felt heavy. He continued, You're not her, but you're someone who didn't deserve what happened. Celia blinked fast, fighting tears. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once and left the room, but something stayed. Behind, a question in her mind. Why her? Why did fate spare her and not his daughter? She picked up another photo, this one old and worn. It showed a medal, a human army badge. He was a soldier once. That night, Celia couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts. She climbed out of bed and walked toward the control room. The door was slightly open. Grayson was inside talking to someone through a comm. No, I'm not handing her over, he said. She's not for trade, she's under my protection. A pause. You try taking her from me, and I'll remind you why humans don't lose twice. The call ended with a sharp beep. Celia froze. Who was he talking to? Grayson turned and saw her. He didn't look surprised. You heard that? She nodded slowly. They want me? He sighed. The syndicate doesn't forget stolen property. They tracked my ship. Celia took a shaky breath. You're in danger because of me. He shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. She stepped forward. I can leave. No, he said firmly. They'll find you, hurt you, use you. She looked down. Then what do we do? Grayson looked out at the stars. We run. The next morning, Celia found a bag packed with supplies near her door. A voice behind her said, We leave in 5 minutes. She turned. Where are we going? Old station on the edge of the Forgotten Belt. A friend owes me a favor. Will it be safe? Grayson smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. For a while. As they prepared the ship, Salia noticed something strange, a scar on Grayson's neck, shaped like a brand. It wasn't a slave mark. It was a military code. Were you more than a soldier? She asked. Grayson didn't answer right away. He opened a locked drawer and pulled out a black case. Inside was a small device with blinking lights and sharp edges. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was dangerous. I used to do bad things, he said, for the right reasons. She stared at him. And now? He looked at her. Now I try to do the right things, even if it costs me. As the ship lifted off, Celia watched the stars move past. She wasn't a slave anymore. She wasn't hunted prey anymore. But she wasn't free either, not yet. Not while people like the Syndicate still ruled. And not while kind humans like Grayson had to live in hiding. She placed the photo of Grayson's daughter on the table near her seat. I'm not her, she whispered. But I'll honor her. Grayson said nothing, but his hand rested gently on her shoulder. No words, just a silent promise. They flew into the dark, but they weren't afraid. Not anymore. The stars outside blinked like tiny warning lights. Inside the ship, Grayson was quiet. Too quiet. Salia could feel it in the way he checked every panel, every system, every weapon. His jaw stayed tight. His eyes scanned the radar again and again. She finally asked, "Are they following us?" Grayson didn't answer. Not right away. Then, just one word. Yes. Salia's heart sank. He pointed to a red dot on the screen. Syndicate ship. Not close enough to shoot, but close enough to track. She looked closer. Why don't we fight? Grayson gave a sharp laugh. Because they outgun us 10-1. Silence. Then, but that doesn't mean I won't fight if I have to. They dropped out of hyperdrive at a small broken station hidden in the shadows of a dead moon. The place was falling apart. Metal beams floated freely in space. Lights flickered weakly. Grayson shut down most of the ship's systems. We'll hide here, he said, just for the night. Celia followed him into the dusty corridors of the old station. It smelled like rust and old fire. This place had seen war before. They reached a sealed room. Grayson keyed in a code. The door hissed open. Stay here, he said. I'm going to send a signal to an old friend. Celia hesitated. Don't go far. He gave her a small nod and disappeared down the hallway. The room was cold, quiet, too quiet. Celia sat on the floor, knees hugged to her chest. Then, footsteps, too heavy to be Grayson. She froze. The door opened with a hiss and two large figures stepped in, tall, armored, sharp weapons on their backs. Bounty hunters. Her breath caught. Her heart raced. One of them grinned, showing sharp black teeth. There you are, he said. Little runaway. She backed away. They stepped closer. The second one growled. The human thinks he can hide you, funny. Leave me alone, she shouted. The first bounty hunter raised a hand, preparing a stun net. But then, boom! The wall beside them exploded. Smoke filled the room. A voice shouted, Get down! Salia dropped just as Grayson stormed in. Blaster. In one hand, knife in the other. He moved fast. Too fast for someone his age. He fired once. One bounty hunter fell. He rolled to the side, dodged a strike, then slammed his knife into the second hunter's leg. The room was chaos. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. Then, silence. Both bounty hunters lay on the floor unconscious. Grayson breathed hard, blood on his arm, a burn on his jacket. Celia stared in shock. You fought like a soldier. I was one, he said simply. She helped him up. We need to go. Now. Grayson nodded. They were scouts. More are coming. Back on the ship, alarms blared. 2 more ships were closing in. Grayson jumped into the pilot's seat. "Hold tight," he shouted. The engines roared. The ship tore through space, dodging blasts. Salia watched from behind, gripping the seat. "They're still chasing us." Grayson narrowed his eyes. "Let them." He flipped a switch. A glowing red device slid from under the ship's panel. "What's that?" she asked. Grayson smiled. "Something old, something banned." He pressed a button. Behind them, a shockwave exploded. A burst of static and fire filled space. The enemy ships were blinded. One crashed into a rock field. The other spun out of control. Silence returned. They were safe. For now. Later, Grayson patched his arm with a shaky hand. Salia brought him a cup of water. "You're hurt," he nodded. "Not bad." She sat beside him. "Why do you risk everything for me?" He looked at her, really looked. "I told you, I couldn't save my daughter. I won't fail again." She blinked. "You think I'm like her?" "No," he said. "You're stronger." That night, Salia didn't sleep in fear. She sat awake by the window, watching the stars. She felt something strange, not just safety, not just freedom, but purpose. The syndicate wanted her dead, but she was still breathing. Because one human decided her life mattered, and she would never forget that. The ship floated through quiet space again, but silence didn't mean peace, not inside Salia's heart. She sat in the hallway outside Grayson's room, her back against the cold wall. Every now and then, she heard him coughing. Sharp. Rough. He was hiding pain, not just in his body, but in his soul. And she had to know the truth. She stood up and walked to the door. She knocked once. "It's open," he said. She stepped in. His room was small and simple. Just a bed, a table, and an old bag half open on the floor. Grayson sat at the edge of his bed, wrapping a fresh bandage on his arm. "You should rest," Salia said quietly. He looked at her, one eyebrow raised. "You're telling me to rest now?" She smiled just a little, then she took a breath. "You said you were a soldier. What kind?" Grayson didn't answer right away. He finished tying the bandage and stood. Walked to the old bag. He pulled out a worn black box and opened it. Inside were medals. Real ones. Earth Defense Command. Elite Unit. Special Ops. "You were more than a soldier," Salia whispered. "You were a war hero." Grayson shook his head. "No heroes in war, just survivors." She stepped closer. "Then why did you leave Earth?" He looked down. The weight of old memories pulled at his shoulders. "I followed orders," he said slowly, "even the ones I didn't agree with." He picked up a small photo from the box. His wife, his daughter. Laughing. The war ended. Earth won. But it cost us everything. My team was sent to protect a border colony. That's where I met her. Alira's mother. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She was strong. Smarter than me. Didn't care that I was human. We built a life. Salia listened closely. Every word opened a new wound in his voice. But I trusted the system too. Much. I reported slaver activity, asked for backup. He paused. They ignored me. He swallowed hard. 1 week later, the colony was gone, and my family with it. The silence in the room grew heavy. "I searched for years," he said. "I lost friends, lost faith. But I never stopped." He finally looked at her. "Then I saw you, in that cage. And I couldn't walk away." Salia's voice was small. "You saved me because of guilt." "No," he said. "I saved you because no one saved her. I wasn't strong enough then, but I am now." Later, Salia sat in the pilot's seat, staring at the stars. Grayson was resting, breathing slow. She turned to the navigation screen. It showed their destination, Port Kalen 9, a place filled with smugglers, secrets, and danger, a place to start a new life. But it wouldn't be easy. A blinking alert appeared on the screen. Syndicate vessel detected. Long range. They were still being hunted. Still not safe. Salia stood up and walked to the storage bay. She opened a crate Grayson had shown her days before. Inside were weapons. She reached for a stun pistol with shaking hands. It felt heavy, strange, but right. She whispered to herself, "I won't hide forever." When Grayson woke, he found her in the training room, sweat on her brow, fists clenched. Practicing. He leaned on the doorway, arms crossed. "Who taught you to punch like that?" "No one," she said. "I'm teaching myself," Grayson chuckled. "Your stance is wrong." "Then fix it." He walked over and showed her, adjusted her feet, raised her arms. Like this. Center of gravity matters. She nodded. Tried again. Stronger. Faster. He watched her in silence for a while. Then he said, "You remind me of her." "Your daughter?" "No," he smiled. "Her mother?" Salia blushed slightly and looked down. "Was she a fighter?" He nodded. "The best I ever knew." That night they shared a quiet meal. Salia looked at the stars outside and asked, "If you could go back, would you still become a soldier?" Grayson thought for a long time, then said, "No. I'd become a farmer. Something boring. Something safe." He looked at her. "But if I hadn't walked that road, I wouldn't have found you." Salia blinked. "You really believe that?" "I believe everything happens for a reason, even pain." She smiled, but it was sad. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be yet." "You don't have to," Grayson said. "You just have to survive long enough to find out." She nodded, then looked him in the eyes. "I'm not running anymore." Grayson nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "Then we fight. Together." 3 days passed. 3 days of hiding in dark corners of space. 3 days of planning. Grayson's ship was parked inside a forgotten asteroid dock. Old, abandoned, safe, for now. Inside, the lights were dim, power running low. Grayson sat at the table with a map stretched out. Star routes, patrol paths, syndicate zones, all marked with red ink. Across from him, Salia leaned forward, eyes sharp. Not scared this time. Focused. "We go through the Venkar Rift," she said, pointing to the map. Grayson raised an eyebrow. "That route's dangerous, gravity storms, pirates, but they won't expect us there." He nodded slowly. "Smart." She looked at him. "You said there's someone at Kalen 9 who can get me real freedom papers." "There is," Grayson said. "Old friend. If we reach him, your name goes into the Earth records. The syndicate can't touch you." Salia took a breath. "Then, let's do it." Grayson folded the map. "We leave at first light." That night, Salia couldn't sleep. She walked to the storage bay, ran her fingers over the ship's walls. Every bolt, every scratch, told a story. She had never stayed anywhere this long without being chained. This ship felt like a home, but it wasn't hers. Not yet. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. It was Grayson, holding 2 mugs of hot liquid. He offered one. "No chains, no cages, just caffeine," he said with a smirk. She took it, smiling. "You always drink this before a mission?" "Every time." They stood there in silence, sipping. Then she asked, "What if we don't make it?" Grayson looked at her. "Then we go down swinging," he said. The next morning, the engines roared to life. They slipped out of the asteroid dock and into black space. At first, the journey was calm. They passed through old trade routes and dead zones, avoiding patrols. But as they neared the Venkar Rift, the stars seemed to stretch, like the space itself was bending. Grayson gripped the controls. "Gravity waves incoming. Hold on." The ship rocked. Lights flickered. Alarms beeped. Salia held tight, her eyes wide. But Grayson didn't flinch. He flew like he was part of the ship, steady, fearless. Finally, the shaking stopped. They had made it through. But something wasn't right. The radar blinked red. Another ship behind them, fast armed. Salia leaned over the screen. "It's small, not syndicate class." Grayson narrowed his eyes. Could be a smuggler. He opened the comm, a voice crackled through. Grayson. Long time. Grayson stiffened. Tarn? Celia looked up. The friend? Grayson responded. We're coming to Kalen 9. You still got the setup? The voice laughed. Of course. For you, anything. But Celia felt a chill. Something in that laugh didn't feel right. They reached the outer edge of Kalen 9. The station floated above a red gas planet. Old, crowded, and full of secrets. As they docked, Grayson turned to Celia. Stay close, speak only to me, trust no one. She nodded. They entered the station. The air smelled like oil and sweat. Tarn waited at the gate, a tall human with slick hair and cybernetic eyes. Grayson, my old friend, he said, arms wide. They hugged, but Grayson's grip was cold. Tarn looked at Celia. This the girl? Cute. Bit small, though. Celia's stomach twisted. Grayson stepped between them. She's under my protection. Tarn smiled. Of course, of course. He led them through winding halls to a back room. There, Tarn said, pointing to a console. Upload her data. New ID, new name. Grayson connected a device to the terminal. Celia watched the screen load. But then, something blinked red. Grayson's eyes widened. The system sending out a signal. Tarn stepped back. Sorry, old friend, Syndicate pays better. Betrayal. Celia gasped. Grayson grabbed her arm and ran. Move. Guards poured into the hallway. Gunfire echoed. They ducked behind. Crates. Grayson returned fire, fast and deadly. Celia crawled under a gate and pulled him through. They raced toward the ship. A laser scorched Grayson's side. He grunted but didn't stop. They reached the dock, slammed the hatch shut. Engines! Celia shouted, jumping into the co-pilot seat. Grayson collapsed into the pilot's chair, bleeding. She reached for controls. I'll fly. No, he said, gripping the stick. I finished this. They blasted off just as Syndicate ships closed in. Later, when they were safe in deep space again, Celia wrapped Grayson's wound. He winced. Tarn always was a snake. I should have known, she whispered. It's not your fault. I trusted him, she said. He smiled like the others. Grayson looked at her. So do you, he said. But you still chose good. She stared at him, then smiled weakly. You're not allowed to die. Grayson chuckled. Not today. In her room, Celia stared at the ID chip in her hand. Fake name, Lyra Gray, a mix of Lyra and Grayson, a name she chose. Not a number. Not a slave tag. She tucked it into her pocket and whispered, Next time, I'll protect you. The ship floated quietly through deep space. Inside, Celia sat alone, her hands curled around a small ID chip. The name on it blinked softly in blue light. Lyra Gray Knott, Celia, the slave. Not the girl in chains. This was her name now. A name she had chosen. She whispered it out loud. Lyra Gray. It felt strange at first, but it was hers. Behind her, Grayson's footsteps echoed down the hall. He walked slower now, his wound still healing, but he didn't let it show. She turned as he entered. You all right? He asked. She nodded. I think I'm ready. Grayson leaned on the wall. Ready for what? She held up the chip. To live. Grayson looked at her, not as a protector, not as a soldier, but as something more. Proud. You earned that name, he said. I want to use it, she replied. I want to help others like me, slaves, runaways, girls no one came for. Grayson raised an eyebrow. You're talking about war. I'm talking about saving someone, she said. Like you saved me. He sat down slowly. You'll be hunted. I was already hunted, she said, but now I'm not scared. They spent days fixing the ship, patching wounds and reworking plans. Lyra trained harder. She studied space law, syndicate maps, escape routes. Grayson watched her. She wasn't the same girl he bought in the market. She had fire now. One night they sat on the deck, looking out at the stars. Grayson handed her a small package. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." She unwrapped it. Inside was a small silver pendant, a star cradled by two hands. "It was my daughter's," he said softly. "Elira, she wore it every day." Lyra held it gently. "I can't take this." "You already have her name," Grayson replied. "You gave it meaning again." She closed her hand around the pendant. "Then I'll carry her legacy." Grayson looked at her. "And what about yours?" She smiled. "Lyra Gray, protector of the lost." Weeks passed. They traveled from planet to planet, quietly, carefully. They found a colony of ex-slaves hiding in the hills of Arvin III. Lyra taught them how to hide better, how to shoot, how to build traps. Grayson taught the young boys how to fly. The colony began to grow stronger, and word began to spread. The ghost ship saves slaves. A blue girl with white hair fights the syndicate. A human soldier and his adopted daughter burned a slaver camp. The syndicate tried to find them, but Lyra and Grayson were always one step ahead. One day, while repairing the ship's rear stabilizer, Lyra looked out at the stars and asked, "What now?" Grayson stood beside her, arms crossed. "We keep going." "Forever?" He paused. "Until no more girls like you are sold in cages." She turned to him. "You know, you saved me." "You saved yourself," he said. She stepped forward and gently placed her hand on his chest. "No, I was broken. I didn't even know who I was. You gave me space to heal, to choose, to breathe. No one ever did that before." Grayson's eyes softened. "You were never broken, Lyra. You were just waiting to wake up," she smiled. "Then let's wake up the others." On the edge of space near the border of Syndicate territory, Lyra sent out her first signal, a beacon, a call. "If you are lost, afraid, hunted, we will find you. You are not alone." The message bounced across systems. It didn't ask for money or loyalty, just hope. Ships began to answer. 1, then 3, then a dozen. A movement was growing, and at its heart stood a girl who was once forgotten, and a human who never gave up. One night, as stars glowed outside, Lyra stood beside Grayson on the ship's deck. She held the pendant tightly. "Do you think she would have liked me?" Lyra asked. "Elira?" Grayson smiled softly. "She would have followed you into battle." They stood together not as master and slave, but as family, a father, a daughter, warriors of their own kind. The market had called her worthless. The world had left her broken, but one man had given her a second chance, and she turned it into a mission. Her name was Lyra Gray, and she was never going back.